Welcome back to Weekly Briefing. After the White House refused to hand over unredacted congressional documents to the GOP committee investigating January 6, investigation chairman Georgia Congressman Barry Loudermilk is asking the question, what does the White House have to hide? So, Congressman, is it fair to say your committee's investigation is being stonewalled by the White House at this point, sir?
Well, John, I think that's pretty clear. What we're looking for are the documents that were to be preserved by the January 6th committee, but at least we know the chairman decided he didn't want to preserve certain documents, and we were able to find out that some of those documents were sent to the White House. Some were sent to the Homeland Security. All we're doing is asking for those documents, which are property of the House of Representatives, to be returned to my committee, which is a committee of jurisdiction now. The White House is telling us, okay, we'll return them, but we're going to redact them first. That's unacceptable because we need the documents as they were when they were handed to the White House. We need to have the exact same information that the Select Committee on January 6th had. It's not just about missing documents. It's more so about the information that is in those documents that we need. So, yeah, I think they're stonewalling, as you said, this investigation into the investigators.
Well, what's interesting is reading this letter here that you got from the White House. It's from Richard Sauber, who's special counsel to the president. And he makes pretty clear here that they're following what they say is a procedure and a process. But it's pretty clear here that they are in no hurry to go through these documents and decide what they're going to redact and what they're not going to redact. And by the way, when we get finished, we're happy to turn them over to the archives, and then you guys can have at them. So it seems like this letter that you've gotten from the White House is a nice way for them to say, hey, we're slow walking this, and we're not really going to help you out here. Is that kind of your reading between the lines?
Well, it's that, but it's also they're trying to hide information, obviously. So keep in mind, the White House provided these documents to the Select Committee that were unredacted. A House committee, once they submitted those to the committee, those became House documents. They were part of the official proceedings. Instead of preserving those to hand them to my committee as dictated by House rules, Benny Thompson, the chairman of the Select Committee, decided to shuttle them back over to the White House where we couldn't get to them. Now the White House is saying, well, we'll send them back to you, but we're going to sanitize them before we give them to you. They weren't sanitized when they were given to the Select Committee. The Select Committee just took them and handed them back to them. My question is, one, what are you trying to hide? What are you sanitizing? And second of all, that's unacceptable. We're asking for the documents as they were submitted to the January 6th Select Committee. Why would you want to take information out and take it away from us in our investigation, but you didn't have a problem sending it to the Democratic-controlled Select Committee? Somebody is trying to hide something. This is unacceptable. We need the information in unredacted form as it was given to the Select Committee on January 6th. If they're citing security concerns, why is there all of a sudden a security concern now under Republican-controlled House that there wasn't under Democrat-controlled House? That's another question. So basically what we're seeing is not only White House stalling, but they are trying actively and publicly saying, we're going to keep you from getting certain information that belongs to the House of Representatives.
What kind of information do we think that these documents pertain to, Congressman? Do we have some sense of whether this is pertaining to security issues surrounding January 6th, or do we have some sense of the subject matter here?
Well, we're trying to run that down, John, but what we suspect at this point is that it was people that were very close to President Trump during the time period leading up to and on January 6th. And their testimony to the January 6th committee is very critical. And it draws to question why the January 6th committee hid those documents from us and why the White House is trying to keep us from getting it. I mean, speculation, and this is purely speculation, is possibly there's information in there that is not commensurate with the report that the January 6th committee put out. Maybe that this testimony didn't support their preconceived narrative, which was that Donald Trump was actually involved in the attack of January 6th. Look at this report that they submitted after spending $18.5 million. They came to really no conclusion other than their conclusion was Donald Trump was the reason that the January 6th committee or the Capitol was attacked on January 6th. And it was all his fault, but they really gave no hard evidence in the report. And so, you know, if the information in these documents supported their claim, why would they want to redact the information? And so, again, we're just trying to get to the truth. All we want to do is get to the truth of what happened so we can make sure that the Capitol is secure, that this will never happen again, but also looking into the actions of January 6th, the committee of January 6th. And every time we start looking deeper, we get more questions and more concerns over the honesty and the integrity of the entire committee.
I think you used the word hide before. You said that the Democrat J6 panel was making an attempt to hide these documents. Is that the word you intended to use in connection with
Absolutely.
what that was intentional?
Yeah, I think it was, especially I wrote a letter to the former chairman, Benny Thompson, when we started realizing there were certain documents we did not have. Now, some of it was just blocks of information that was missing, so we didn't know exactly what it was. We just knew that there was nothing regarding the actual security failure at the Capitol and the tracking of money flow and that type of thing. We didn't have documents on that. But we also knew specific things like videotapes of depositions. We didn't have any of that. But we did find from another source. Now, these letters were not given to us, but we found them in another source, 2 letters where Benny Thompson was returning. He was writing to the White House and Homeland Security, letting them know he's returning documents to them, that he's not going to keep them. And he admitted, look, we just decided we're going to send those back. There was no reason to send them back. He claims it was for security reasons. Well, if it was a security reason, you've had them this long. They're actual property of the House of Representatives. He didn't have the authority to send those back. Why would you just choose those documents to send somewhere else instead of archiving them, keeping them, passing them along like you should? To me, it looks like it was an attempt to hide these documents, to keep them from my committee having access to them. And whatever information it is the White House says they're going to redact is probably and most likely the key information that we need to have and that they don't want us to have.
Last time we spoke, I think you mentioned something called the Blue Team or the Blue Report, and this was something that the Democrats, as I recall, were working on with regard to the security failures on January 6th at the Capitol, which is kind of the heart of the issue. What do we know now about that Blue Team report, supposedly from the Democrats, that material that they were supposed to be developing, that investigation?
Really not much more than when we spoke last. Is the Blue Team was investigating the security failure, but there are no documents that we can find, any significant documents from the Blue Team other than just a couple of transcribed interviews or depositions that were attributed to the Blue Team. We have no investigation, reports of investigation. We don't have any results. There's nothing in the final report from the Blue Team. It's as if they never did any work whatsoever. And so we're still on a quest to find out if the Blue Team, one thought is, well, they were doing investigation, but they found out something someone in let's say an influential position would not have wanted them to find out, and they were suppressed. Another is they just did not fit the narrative of what the Select Committee actually wanted to do, which was basically build a manifesto against Donald Trump. And so the Blue Team, that didn't have a whole lot of political fanfare with it. But what they were doing, which was supposedly investigating the security failure at the Capitol, to me, that was the most important aspect of what anyone should be doing after the Capitol fell. Put the politics aside, how did the building that houses the most powerful legislature in the world, how did it fall to a small mob? That should never happen. but yet it just seems that all that work was just swept under the rug.
Sir, a slightly different, though related subject. I think your colleague, Mr. Comer, has been releasing a bunch of emails. It's come out that apparently Mr. Biden was using pseudonyms and fake email accounts when he was vice president. And there's one here that's written from a staff member of the Office of the Vice President to Robert Peters, which is apparently the vice president. Hunter Biden is CC'd, and it's on May 26, 2016, when Hunter Biden was working for Verizon, was anomaly employed. It says, boss, 8:45 a.m. prep for 9 a.m. phone call with President Poroshenko of Ukraine. And this was CC'd to Hunter Biden. I'm wondering, as you and your colleagues sort of digest this information, new information coming out about President Biden, then Vice President Biden, now President Biden, and the connection with Hunter Biden, the fact that it appears he knew more than he said about the business of his son, is the mood of the conference changing on this question of impeachment? Because it just seems like there's a lot of information now coming out that really is connecting some of these dots. And I got to think that some of your colleagues are maybe thinking that maybe we should move ahead with some kind of an impeachment inquiry. I know before they kind of wanted to wait. Is that changing now, sir?
Well, I think it is, and the reason that it's changing is because we're getting more evidence, and we've been clear all along. We do not want to do an impeachment. I don't think anybody wants to do an impeachment. But if we do an impeachment, it's going to be based on fact, and it's going to be based constitutionally on were there high crimes and misdemeanors. And when I say we don't want to do an impeachment, we will do an impeachment if it's necessary. And it appears that it is necessary at this point. And what I'm trying to do is contrast that to what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats did. All they wanted to do was impeach President Trump. It became a political motive for them. They used it for political purposes. We don't want to use it for political purposes. You know, we would hope we would never have a president that needed to be impeached. But at this point, it is becoming clearer and clearer every day that there was lies, and it appears that there are high crimes and misdemeanors. And we've always said, when the evidence leads us to that point, that's when it's time to move forward. And I think we are right on the cusp of having everything we need to do to move into an impeachment inquiry, which opens up more investigation, access to get more documents, and then more than likely, in my opinion, it'll probably lead to articles of impeachment.
Very good. Congressman Barry Loudermilk of Georgia. Sir, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
John, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
When we return, I'll be joined by our panel of experts. You won't want to miss this. We'll be right back.